Oh, hey y'all, Fat Man Outdoors. Hey, if you liked the video, click that like button and click subscribe so that you'll get notifications whenever we post new content. Appreciate you watching. This is the Fat Man. I'm gone. Hey y'all, Fat Man Outdoors. If you've done much pan fishing at all, or even really any kind of fishing at all, you've had experiences with stuff like this. All kinds of them. There's no end to the types of floats that you can find in most places that have a fishing department. Even if it's just a department in a small store that sells live bait, they'll have dozens and dozens of sizes and styles of floats, and all of them pretty much have their own niche that they work best in. But there's one in particular that really works great, and it is the slip float. The slip float can be used in almost any type of fishing you're going to use a float for, whether it's going to be fishing shallow for panfish, or more, maybe for bass that are on weed edges or under lily pads or back in the grass. The slip float is a great piece of tackle to have, and it's cheap. Most of the time you can get them for really inexpensive ones, like these slip floats right here. They're actually a pin float, so you can even actually use this float in two different ways. You can make it a slip float, or you can pin it and make it a fixed position float, and I use those for catfishing. If you go back and look on how I do my catfish rigs when I'm dragging or drifting, you'll see that I use those kind of floats. But the slip float itself has so much versatility, and they're so cheap, so easy to use, and they get the job done. They work, they catch fish. So let's not waste too much time talking about them, and let me put a rig together and show you how I do it. And it may not be the best way that you do it, may not be the way you want to do it, but it's the way I do it, and it's the easiest way that I found to do it. And I'll show you a little trick I do that most people don't do, that will save you a lot of aggravation and a lot less work. So let's get to it. Real quick, there's something I wanted to show you. I've done a little short video on these when I first got them. We're about to do our first field tests on these. Turkey season caught us when I got them, and we've had a crazy amount of rain here in south central Kentucky over the last 2 or 3 weeks. The water's been up. Driving on the lake right now in a boat's like being in a log jam. On Lake Cumberland and Dale Hollow, it just don't work. So we're going to have to let everything clear out a little bit. We're hoping about midweek this week we're going to try to get some fishing in. Going to be a storm front come through Thursday, so we're going to try to fish Wednesday, hoping that pressure change is going to pick things back up. The water's come up considerably, but there's a lot of stuff floating. But we're going to get on the water with these. And what I'm talking about is Bigfoot floats. Okay, the guy that makes these, he's a pretty cool dude. He makes some stuff that's really interesting. Some of them are made with porcupine quills, and some of them are made out of a really lightweight reed. And then he also makes balsa wood slip floats. These are really top quality, guys. These things don't look like something you're going to go in Walmart and buy. Everybody that you know ain't going to have one of these. Each one of these is a piece of art. Each one of them is hand painted, and you can tell that there's been a lot of time put into making these floats. Y'all look him up on Facebook. His Facebook page is Bigfoot Floats. That's spelling Bigfoot one word, but with 2 U's instead of 2 O's. So it's B-I-G-F-U-U-T Floats. Look him up. You're going to be amazed at the different kinds of floats and stuff that he has, and he'll fix you right up. He'll make you whatever you need, whatever colors you want. If you got a sports team you like their color, or if it's just like a color because it's more visible, let him know what you want. He can hand paint these the way you want them, and it's not going to be something that everybody's got one. Y'all look him up, Bigfoot Floats. Alright, let's get started putting one of these together. First thing you're going to need, of course, you're going to need a line on your reel. This is 4-pound test. It's Invisalign. It really disappears real well in the water, but out of the water you can see it real well. So if you're not fishing with floats and you're just fishing on the bottom or just free floating, you can see that line flick, and a lot of times that'll be a good thing to tell you that you got a hit. So it's really good and visible. It's made by a company called Vicious, and it's for the money. It's a lot cheaper than a lot of lines out there, and this stuff is a good line. It's a really good line. But anyway, moving on. Alright, so I got the main line here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a short piece of 8-pound test. What I like to do is double whatever's on the reel. That's what I'm going to make my bobber stopper out of. Now a lot of you will say, well, why don't you buy bobber stoppers and you don't have to do this? You can. I like these, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. What I'm going to do, I'm hoping you can see that, is I've got the loop held up and the main line as well. And I'm going to take the tag end of the loop and just go through the loop, and I'll do that with 8-pound test line. I'll do it 4 or 5 times. Just go right through the loop. That's 3. It don't take you long to do one of these, and the good thing about it is most of the time if you do get a break off, it'll be below this and you won't lose it. Now I've got run through the loop of that 4 or 5 times, so now I'm going to get both ends of that loop that I put on there, and I'm going to pull them together simultaneously. And I like to put a little bit of moisture on them before I finish cinching it up. Now I've cinched that knot completely up, okay? That knot's not going to come undone. Now I'm going to take my fingernail clips. Make sure you cut the right line or you'll be starting all over. And I'm going to cut this really close. For an old fat guy that can't see, sometimes that's a challenge. Now, as you can see, there's not no tag sticking out, okay? But this will still slide up and down freely. And that knot won't come undone. It'll stay tight. And it won't burn your line because it's basically the same viscosity as your line is, so it won't get hot when you slide it up and down, even if it's dry. That'll cause you an issue with your line getting a spot in it that flattens out and gets soft. So now we got our bobber stop on. So now the next thing is, and we save money on that because I use like 10 inches of fishing line versus giving $1.79 for 3 bobber stoppers at Walmart. Okay, so now the bead thing. This is a little orange bead. I like to use the orange ones because if you drop it in the boat, they're easy to find. There's a deal about these bobber stop beads. If you go buy a bead out of the store and the store says it's a bobber stop bead, you're going to give a whole bunch more money for that little bead because they said it's a bobber stop bead. You can go into the crafts department or go online on Amazon and for like $3 buy 1,000 of them. And if you go on Walmart, you'll give like $2 for free. So do it the way you feel like you need to. But like I said, if you use stuff that costs you less money, then well, there you go. So now you've got that on float. Okay, now 90% of the time on these floats, you're going to have one end that's got a lot of bright color on it and one end that ain't. Okay, the one end with the bright color on it is going to go on first. Alright, finally got it through. The little line's hard for me to see. Okay, now you can see I've got the bobber on the line with the bright colors up, so if it's sitting in the water, you're going to see the bright colors. Okay, now the cool thing about these small bobbers, they don't have a lot of resistance. These teardrop bobbers don't. so most fish won't feel them when they pull them under. I'm going to put on our hook. Now with these, I just do a regular fisherman's knot, twist the line up about 4, 5, 6 times, run it back through the eye of the loop. Now I've got the bobber stop, I've got the bead, I've got my bobber on, and I've got my hook on. Now you'll want to put some sort of weight on there most of the time. I'm mashing my little weight here together. Don't want to over crush them, because then you'll, especially with that small line, you'll just cause yourself a bigger problem than you got. Now that I've got my weight pinched on, I want to figure out how much space I want between it and the hook. Now if I'm fishing for real finicky fish, and all I want to do is use that weight to get my bobber to stand up and get the bait in the area, I may go a little bit farther away from it, maybe 10, 12 inches away from the hook. Most of the time I'm going to be 6 to 7 inches away from the hook, 90% of the time. So now I've got everything tied on. The slip float goes down to the sinker, all the way down. Okay, so now we've got the whole rig put together. We've got a number 4 Aberdeen hook. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on there. We've got a tungsten no lead weight. So that little bit of a weight is only 1/64 of an ounce. It's not a big weight at all. Then above that, of course, we got our float. And then above that, just a few inches, I have my own little bobber stop that I tied on there with a uni knot. Now, what'll happen when how this rig, this slip float rig, benefits you when you're fishing. Okay, it gives you the capability to vertical jig, basically, pretty much anywhere you want without having to put your boat or yourself too close to the area where you're trying to fish, and having, especially with spooky fish or fish that's been pressured a lot, they're not going to see you nearly as easily, and they're not going to get spooked, so you'll have a better chance of triggering a bite. So when you reel up, of course, it comes all the way down to your weight. Alright, then when you throw in the water, then that weight pulls it down till it gets to the float, and you can see I'm lifting the weight up and down with the float, because when it gets to that bobber stop, that's as far as deep as it can go. And you can adjust this to whatever depth you're going to be fishing at, and you can literally go any depth you want. If you want to fish 30 feet deep, you can fish 30 feet deep. You just pull that little bobber stop that I made with the uni knot, just pull it up the line, it'll stay there, it'll keep the same tension all the time, and it's easy to move. And the good thing about it is it'll reel up through small eyes. If you're crappie fishing or you bluegill fishing, a lot of times you use smaller gear, you use lighter gear, because you want to have fun fishing. You don't want to throw a line out there that's on a 20-pound test line that you can just crank in anything and not get any kind of fight out of. So most people want to have a little bit of fun while they're fishing. I do anyway. So you use lighter gear, and when you use lighter gear rods, then you get smaller diameter of the holes in the eyes, and you don't want anything catching when you're throwing it out, or when you go to reel it in. If those bobber stops are too big, if they don't catch in your eye, a lot of times they'll catch right at the edge of it, and when you're reeling it in, it'll have to make you readjust your depth of your line every time. And a lot of times if you don't check it, then you'll end up fishing in the wrong depth, and after you catch one fish, you may not catch any more. But with this uni knot deal with the fishing line, works great. You can adjust it to any height that you want, and it'll stay right there. You don't have to worry about it coming off. It won't get loose. It won't, when you move it up and down the line, like some of the rubber stops I'm going to show you here in a second, it won't burn your line, won't get hot. They work great. You can use these in, like I said, in almost any situation, but where they really soar is if you're panfish fishing for bluegill, shellcrackers, red ears, perch. They dig little areas in weed beds. So there'll just be a small pocket, maybe 3 or 4 feet across, that they've been fanning out, and there may be a lot of fish keyed on that little pocket. Well, if you can find exactly that location of that little pocket, you can stay back away from it with your boat and throw into that little area of that pocket, and as soon as it hits, it'll go straight down into that pocket where those fish are, instead of you having to get over them and taking a risk on the shadow of the boat or the vibration of the trolling motor or something, messing you up and spooking those fish away. So slip float is far better than any other type float, in my opinion, because they're so versatile. So you are not depending on your float when you're fishing for panfish or crappie especially. You don't want to depend on that float to be what sets the hook, because that's not what does it. Now, I want to talk to you specifically about this float and the guy that makes them. Bigfoot floats. These floats are awesome. Now, he makes a lot of different kinds of floats. You go on his Facebook page, Bigfoot Float, spelling Bigfoot with 2 U's instead of 2 O's, and you'll see some amazing fishing floats that this guy makes. Hand paints them. It's awesome. But the ones that I like are these little bitty skinny, and you see they got a loop on the end there. That's going to work great just the same as these slip floats. The only difference is I have to get my weight down so that when I use these, that they don't go under from just my weight. But once they're in the water and they're setting up like this, and you got a lot of visibility, a lot of orange, bright green, and they're setting like this, if a fish takes the bait, he'll feel nothing, absolutely zero, because there's going to be no resistance when he pulls against this little small stick float. And they work really, really well for, like I said, for finicky fish. Big crappie are notorious if they get that minnow or if they get that jig and they start under and they feel something going, that don't feel right, and they'll just let it go. With these kind of floats that the guy over at Bigfoot Floats produces, it's going to stop that issue. My 100% always choice is going to be a slip float. These floats are so versatile. You can make them into anything you want. If you want them to be a deep running bait and use it under a float, it's move your little piece of line to the depth you want and go to work. If you want to fish real shallow, pull it down. You can stop the bobber right there. Never even let it move. Put it out in the water and you'll be fishing that deep, and it won't ever move. It'll stay right there. It's up to you. You use it the way you want it to work, and that's what makes them so great, is because when you fish them at the depth that you know the fish are there, and you know where you need to be to catch those fish, then you can go to that depth with your bait every single time, and it's quick to adjust. If they're there and you get above them and you get to the height they're wanting and you got the bait that they're feeding on, whether it's shad or you're catching them with jigs, whatever you're catching them on, then once you find that depth, you can hammer on them, because if they're in there, you can take them off. Okay, that line that I'm using to tie my bobber stop with, using that uni knot, this is what I use here. It's got 4-pound test line on the reel. Usually what I'll do is I'll use double whatever's on the reel. So if I'm using 10, I'll use 20-pound to make the bobber stop. Make sure when you put these on that you have beads with small holes, because all beads that you buy off the internet or out of a craft store are not going to have the same size hole. Make sure you get ones that has the smallest hole you can get, so that when you tie that uni knot, you won't have a problem with the knot going through the bead. There are other alternatives. Of course, everybody's seen the little deal with the clear piece of tube, and it's got the green string wrapped around it, and you put your line through it and pull it off and tighten it up. Those things are horrific. If you move them twice, they're done. You got to tear everything apart and redo them, and it's just, no, I ain't going to be doing that. Now these things, I don't know if you've ever seen these. They're actually, those little black things on our rubber have a hole all the way through it. Your line through that eyelet, and then pull the little rubber stop over the eye, and then you can adjust it up and down the line like you do with the uni knot. However, there is a drawback to these, and I'll explain it best I can. Rubber has a consistency that is made to grip. Okay, it's made to get traction, and you get traction by making friction. Okay, and the #1 killer of fishing line is friction. So when you put these on your line, if you move them very much at all, they're going to make a soft spot in your line, because they build up heat bad. Now, it's not quite as bad if you got time and you don't mind to sit down on the side of the boat and like stick your line in your hand and everything underwater to adjust it and to help keep the temperature down when you're moving them. But still, it's going to get like almost like a sanding effect when you move these up and down your line a lot, and it's going to reduce the diameter of your line. It's going to make your line a lot weaker using these. They'll work, and they're okay in my opinion, as long as you leave them in one position. If you know you're going to be fishing 6 or 8 feet deep, put them 6 or 8 feet and just leave them. or if you have the luxury of having enough poles, and maybe set you up a couple of poles set at 10 feet and a couple of poles set at 8 feet, and that way you don't ever have to move them to adjust. You can just pick up a different pole, maybe put you a label on them or something like that. These work. I'm not complaining. I use these sometimes. You know, if I'm in a hurry and I don't have time to tie another uni knot and the fish are biting good, I'll get one of these out and throw it on the deck of the boat, and that way if I break off, I can re-rig real quick if I know I don't have another pole lined up and ready to go. But they'll work. For the sake of not making this video as long as Lonesome Dove, we will cut it short here, but I just wanted to show y'all the stuff that I use and how versatile it is. Guys, that slip float rig is so versatile. You can use it for so many different things. You can use it in so many different styles, so many different places, and it will help you out in ways, like I said, with spooky fish or fish that have been pressured or fish that are on the beds and they in real shallow water. You can stay back away from them, throw past them, and pull into them, and a lot of times that will key a strike every time because they trust the bait coming out of water that's shallower than they are versus something come flying in from deeper water, because most of the time if it's something that's coming flying in from deeper water, then it's something that's wanting to eat them. But guys, I appreciate y'all watching this video. Like I said, one more time, drop in Bigfoot Floats. Check this guy out. He's got some awesome floats. He's a good guy. He'll fix you up whatever you want. Like I said, he gets you team colors. Don't buy UT orange. Come on, y'all don't need to do that. Nothing's that bad. Y'all, this is the Fat Man. I'll see you in the next video. I'm gone. Hey y'all, appreciate you watching this video. Hope to see you in the next one. This is the Fat Man. I'm gone.